So what happens when you're right in the middle of your prayer, in that moment of connection, and something unexpected happens? It's a question a lot of us have, right? Well, Islamic law actually gives us this incredibly detailed and, you'll see, really compassionate way to handle it. Let's dive in.
I mean, we've all been there. You're in a state of deep focus, whether it's prayer, work, or a really important conversation, and bam, your concentration is just shattered. It's a universal feeling, and that's exactly the kind of real-life situation we're going to tackle today.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We'll start by figuring out what kind of interruption we're even talking about. Then, we'll get into the general rule and how to actually apply it. After that, we'll explore the finer points. When should you just restart? When do you have to? And finally, we'll touch on some really interesting special cases.
First things first, we've got to be super clear about the kind of interruption we're discussing. We're not talking about, your phone buzzing or the doorbell ringing. This is about something very specific that happens within the body.
The key phrase you need to know is sabq al-hadath. And what it means is an involuntary impurity that happens to you, completely without your control, during prayer. Think of something like a sudden nosebleed or, passing wind. This is the specific scenario that all these rulings are built around.
So this happens. What's the default rule? Do you just throw in the towel and start all over again? Well, the answer might surprise you. It's based on a principle called al-bina, which literally means to build or to continue.
And the basis for this rule comes straight from the Prophet, peace be upon him. The instruction is crystal clear. You step away from the prayer, you perform ablution, and then you come back and pick up right where you left off. But there's one huge condition. You can't have spoken a word.
Okay, that sounds simple enough in theory, right? But what does that actually look like in practice? Let's walk through the step-by-step of how to apply this principle correctly.
So the very first step, of course, is to perform ablution. The term here is tawaddawa, which you almost certainly know as wudu. It's that ritual washing that you have to do to get back into a state of purity for prayer.
Now this is where it gets really fascinating, because the procedure actually changes depending on your role in the prayer. If you're praying by yourself, you've got some flexibility. You can go back to your spot or just finish right where you did your wudu. But if you're in a congregation, both the follower and the imam must go back to their original spot to keep the lines intact. And the imam has a special duty. They should actually appoint someone to take over and lead the rest of the prayer.
But, and this is so important, this permission to continue is not a free pass. You can only do what is absolutely necessary to perform ablution. So walking to a tap is fine. But any extra stuff, like deciding to draw water from a well or walking over to a whole different building, that invalidates the prayer. If you do that, you got no choice but to start over from scratch.
Now, here's where we get into some beautiful nuance. Just because you can continue doesn't always mean it's the best thing to do. This brings us to a choice between continuing, or al-bina, and starting over, which is called al-istinaf. So when is which one preferred? Well, for someone praying alone, it's actually considered better to just restart the whole prayer. And the wisdom behind that is to keep the prayer completely pure, to avoid mixing it up with non-prayer actions like walking around. But for someone praying in a group, continuing is preferred. Why? To preserve the incredible virtue of praying together in jama'ah.
Okay, up until now we've been talking about minor, involuntary things. But what if the interruption is, well, more severe? There are definitely some cases where continuing just isn't an option on the table.
The rulings are very specific here. There are 3 severe conditions that absolutely require a full restart of the prayer. Things like fainting, a temporary loss of sanity, or having a wet dream during the prayer. In these cases, once the person is able, they have to begin again.
So why the different rule? It all boils down to the level of purification needed. See, the permission to continue, to build upon your prayer, is only for situations that require a minor ablution, or wudu. These more significant events, they require what's known as ghusl, a major ritual purification, or a full bath. And that allowance to continue just doesn't extend to cases that require that higher level of purification. Makes sense, right?
All right, let's wrap this up with a couple of special cases that really add some more layers to these rulings. We'll look at what happens at the very end of the prayer and what the ruling is for doing something on purpose.
So, imagine this. You're at the finish line. You've completed the final sitting, the tashahhud, and the only thing left is to give the final greetings. If an involuntary impurity happens right then, the rule is beautifully simple. You just go perform ablution, come back, and give the final salutation, the taslim. That's it. Now, get ready for a serious plot twist. What if someone intentionally breaks their purity during prayer? You'd probably assume this completely destroys the prayer, right? But the ruling is that their prayer is actually considered completed. I know, it's surprising.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. While the prayer is technically over, the option to continue it, albeit not, is completely off the table. Why? Because you're obligated to end the prayer through your own action. By intentionally breaking your purity, you've fulfilled that obligation. You've ended the prayer. It's a really fascinating legal distinction.
So, when you step back and look at all of this, what's the big takeaway? It's that these detailed rulings show us a legal framework that is so deeply practical and compassionate. It recognizes that we're human, that unexpected things happen, and it gives us clear, graceful ways to handle them. It's a system designed for our real lives, not just for some unreachable spiritual ideal. Thanks for exploring this with me.